Before we start, this is going to be a long video, so I'll add timestamps in the description if you want to skip to a certain section. This will save you some time. I also want to add that I want to make more in-depth guides for each of these sections as there is so much information to tell and I don't want this to be a 1 hour video. The goal of this video, however, is to educate new players on the game so we can all have more enjoyable, competitive games. Anyway, I hope you learned something. Now back to the video. Hellhalt is some sort of spin-off from Legion TD, so if you're familiar with that game, you will be fine in Hellhalt as well. But for those who are completely new to this type of concept, Hellhalt is a wave-based tower defense where your goal is to defeat the enemy guardian. Starting with section 1, commands. This one is a bit more encyclopedic, so if you're not a complete beginner, please skip this part. However, you may still learn something new. Okay, right from the start, if you are red, you get to choose the game mode. This game has a primary mode and a secondary mode. However, you can add as many secondary modes as you like. The main primary mode would be PA, or Profit All, with the main secondary mode being AC, or All Champions. I won't go in detail over every single mode because every game mode is explained in the top left Hellhalt menu button. If you are red, you can type dash and it will put the game automatically in the default game mode, being PAAC. Once the game has started, there is an icon on the builder's command screen with the letter H. Once you hover this button, a list with commands will appear. I will cover the level info commands later in this video. For the other commands, there are a few very nice ones to use. The zoom command lets you zoom in or out depending on the number you add after the zoom. For example, zoom 50. You can also use the mouse scroll to zoom in and out. The view command gives you a different point of view depending on the number you add. This can be number 1, 2, 3, or 4. The roles command lets you see how many roles every player has and what units their role have. The CLS or ACLS command stands for Auto Clear Screen Always. I always use the command ACLS 5 in every game. This clears my screen from text every 5 seconds. The guard command shows you guardian info on the screen. The time command shows the game time. The TG command lets you take control of the guardian. It does require other people to type yes for you to take control. This is very useful if a bad player is controlling the guardian and you don't want to lose unnecessary heals. The H bar command lets you see the HP bar from sent units. This is automatically turned on normally. So unless you don't want to see them, you won't have to type this command. Seeing the HP bar from sent units is always nice to see in my opinion. The GI command lets you see the guardian upgrades on the left of your guardian. I recommend everyone use this command at the start of the game as it is the most useful command in the game. Then the last one I want to cover is the RO command. As a dual lane player, you can do RO. If your offlaner agrees with you, you and your offlaner will swap positions. This is a nice command if you happen to have a good role while your offlaner is having a bad or a mediocre role. Section 2. Buildable Units. In the default mode PAAC, you will get a Profit Builder. This builder has a combination of 6 units from all 15 different builders. This means that this game is at least partially based on luck, as there are units that are very good, but also units that are very bad. Some will be good only early game, while other units might be very good late game. As a dual laner, you can reroll 5 times. This means you can refresh your 6 units for 6 random new ones. As a offlaner, you can do this 6 times. This game has 3 main categories of units. There is melee units, ranged units, and then there is support or utility units. Sheer DPS units will carry you through the early game, while having a bunch of different auras will carry you further in the game as the game progresses to higher levels. Every unit has a different set of variables including gold cost, attack, HP, the defensive type, the range of the unit, and the spell the unit has. I highly recommend, if you're a complete beginner, that you go into a solo game and read all the different units with their spells, as there are more than 90 units to cover. However, I will be making an in-depth unit guide later. There is also the Altar of Heroes that you can build. However, this one costs 1k wood. The Altar of Heroes provides you with a hero that has a unique and a stackable aura of choice. Upgrading the hero to max level also acquires them a special unique extra skill. Section 3. Unit Placement. Placing units is almost more important to succeed than the actual unit itself. Firstly, there is a line on every single lane where the creeps get a bonus 4 armor if they cross it. So make sure your units are fighting the creeps before this line. To do this, you could also use the command attack to call your units into battle before the armor line. As I mentioned before, there are 3 types of units. It is important for your supportive units to stay alive as long as possible, as they will really boost your entire army. That being said, the strongest army in this game is a compact army. Some units have an enormous collision size, while other units have almost no collision size. Use this to your advantage to create a compact army. Keep ranged units in the back is the best thing as they normally don't have a lot of defensive stats to survive long. Next up are air units. These fly above the ground units, resulting in an even compacter army. Late game, the more air units you have, usually the better. It is advised to use a unit, preferably a ranged unit, to draw aggro from creeps. The creeps spawn randomly, so if you get an unlucky spawning RNG, you will get a very bad wave crash, resulting in a high chance of your army being surrounded. Lastly, I want to mention that keeping an eye on the unit range is so important for compact armies. For example, a Boar has a 315 range, and a Thunderbird has a 300 range. These units will perfectly stack, so the Boar stays behind the Thunderbird. To finish this segment, I want to quickly mention building patterns. There is the corner build, the mid build, and the spawn build. Using the corner will allow your units to use the wall as a way to not get surrounded that easily. The mid build is recommended for late game as it is easier to hold late game waves this way. Spawn build is situational and can be very good in some cases, for example against ranged waves. However, I highly recommend you try both of them as some units work better in mid build, units with higher collision size, than on the corner build. Section 4. Wave Information. Every wave has a set amount of units that spawn. Every wave has different HP, attack, and defensive stats. This is important to know as there is a weakness for every defensive stat. Make use of this. For example, wave 7 has light armor. This means that they take more damage from pierce than from melee damage. I also quickly want to mention that the amount of creeps that spawn offlane is more than the amount of creeps that spawn on the duo lane. To see wave information, you can use the command info and then type in the number of wave. You can also type the next command or light, heavy, etc. You can see the waves that have light armor by typing light. As a non-noob, I never use these commands because I learned them by heart over time. It could be nice as a beginner to use these commands or just play the game a lot and you will start to learn these as well. At wave 6 and onwards, there will be one champion spawn. This unit is a lot stronger and drops more gold when killed. Boss waves are level 10, 20, 25, 27, 28, 29, and 30. These waves are generally harder than most waves. After wave 10 and 20, there will be an arena. All units from west combined versus all the units from the east. If it is a 2v3 or an unfair matchmaking, the game will give the team with less players a few boss units as compensation. This is very broken on Arena 1, but very weak for Arena 2. After boss wave 25, the endless waves will start. This means that you won't be able to build more units after wave 26 has spawned. After clearing wave 26, all the units will be teleported to mid, where the goal is to survive as long as possible until one of the team's guardians falls. Lastly, every creep you defeat gives you gold. This means that every wave contains a strict amount of gold. Learning these numbers can be very wise, as this will help you calculate how much gold you can spend on units for the next wave. Section 5, Pushing Crystals. The most important thing in this game is to make a lot of crystals, or as we call it, having a good push. Getting more push is more important than actually just trying to hold the waves. This is because you can use the crystals to send units, to reach waves, to upgrade king, or buy the Altar of Heroes. One wisp will give you crystal every 10 seconds of game time. The non-upgraded wisp produces 2 crystal every 10 seconds. You can buy up to 9 wisps, and you can also upgrade the amount of crystal one wisp gives you every 10 seconds of game time. This has 16 upgrades and thus goes all the way to 18 crystal per harvest. Using this knowledge, if you use a little bit of math, the way to push is to go from 3-0 to 3-1, then to 5-1, then to 5-2, then to 9-2, and then to 9-3, and so on. This is mathematically the most efficient way to push. I could make an advanced video with all the information about push if you would want that. Section 6, Sending Units. In the building's barracks and advanced barracks, there are mercenary units that you can send. Every unit will give you a permanent income for the rest of the game. These units cost crystal. Sending a mercenary unit will result in the enemy team getting this sended unit in a random lane. It is important to know that if you send, for example, a ghoul from the barracks, you will get 2 extra income. However, if the enemy team kills this unit, they will also get 2 extra gold for that wave only. Not as income. This is important to know because if you are sending just for income, you might end up feeding the enemy team a lot of gold. Because Hellhalt is a team game, it is important to communicate with your team on what level you want to send. I highly recommend send either level 1, 2 or 3 to see if they leak. This way you can see what units the enemy team has, and based on this information you can look to send on a higher level to make them lose a guardian heal. This will require some practice, so don't be sad if things don't work out. You can also ask a veteran player to make the calls and ask them to explain why they choose to send a certain wave. This way you can absorb some knowledge. If you send to make them lose a heal, I highly recommend you use the spell Rage. This spell costs crystal, but it will increase the attack speed and movement speed from the wave creeps for all the players on the map. Pairing this with sending units on a wave when the enemy team is weak is a very good combination. That being said, there are 24 sendable units in total. The first 12 are unlocked from the beginning on. On wave 10, you will unlock an extra 6 units to send in the advanced barracks, and on wave 15, you will unlock the rest. Every unit is unique and has a combination of different stats that you can use to your advantage to bully the enemy team. Certain units have an aura or a spell as well. Section 7, King. If you happen to do King or Guardian leagues, surviving is all in the King's hands. It is possible to upgrade the King's HP, attack, and regen stats. The max stats are 30 attack, 50 HP, and 35 regen. At wave 5, your King will randomly get a spell. This can either be Shockwave, Stomp, or Immolation. Immolation spell does not work on airwaves. All spells cost mana and have a cooldown. Besides stats, the king has 2 extra spells. Provoke Anarchy is one of them. This spell purges the nearby champions from the buffs they have, making them easier to kill for the king. Lastly, the king can possess one presence. This can be either royal, dark, or time lord. These will make sure you hold the mid-game leagues. Please communicate with your team what presents you will go for. All presents have unique effects and are way specific. If you watched all the way until the end, I hope you understand the basics now. I will try to make advanced guides for every aspect that I covered in this video, so stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching.